Well, hello, welcome again to Grace in the Good Life. My name is Arni and Christian, and I have with me my co-host.
Yes, I feel pressured to pronounce it in a Faroese way. So my name is Arni and Christian.
Arne.
Yeah.
Arne. And we are on our second episode. Look at us. We're just really churning these out.
Look at us go.
And we have the joy of having Claus Grønbæk from Copenhagen Church in Denmark. And he is an old friend of mine and also one of the humblest, best pastors I've known in my life. So really thankful to have him on. And we have a sermon from him from his church, Copenhagen Church. And I'm just really thankful for how biblical Copenhagen Church has been. And he's just preaching from Ephesians 2.
Yes.
The most reformed
super famous text.
Most reformed passage ever for a Lutheran, but
by grace we have been saved, eh? Mm-hmm.
But I really appreciate
Those
the passage. Exactly. I appreciate the passage and also his intimacy you can just sense with his congregation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's a very, the first word I thought about was serious, but it's not unserious, but it's a very substantial sort of, it's a meaty exposition, but he does it in a really sort of relaxed way. Kind of Danish, you know what I mean? Like, let's not get too serious. Let's, say a couple of jokes and talk about everyday life and be a little bit self-deprecating, but very helpful.
It's funny because he mentions Manuel Vigilius, who had preached the series right before a few times.
Yes.
Who's also a friend, and he's written for us, and he is more of that serious,
all right,
like bring the heat. So it's a kind of a good contrast. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah. Maybe we can talk to Claus about this, but he acknowledges right at the start that if you're here and you're not a Christian, this might sound weird to you. It's like looking under the hood.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about, if you have any questions, there can be discussion later. Send me a text. So, are you familiar with what would be the sort of the proportion of members and Christians in relation to new people, seekers, non-Christians on a regular Sunday for a Copenhagen Church? Do you know?
Yes, I think they're very inspired by Keller trying to have guests that are not Christians and doing a QA on a SMS at the end. But I think maybe they don't actually have a lot of unbelievers at their services, but they're very intentional about making that effort. But yeah, we can ask Claus too. I think it changes obviously from season to season. So
yes, of course. And they're placed right in the city center, right?
Yep. So
right next
we get to New Song gets to share an office with them, which we're very thankful for. And so, yeah.
Very cool.
All right. Well, good. Let's go ahead and bring Claus on here shortly. All right. We're just switching to English here now and trying see if our mics are working. And I noticed you guys are wearing the same glasses. Was that the plan there?
Just superior style.
You can't talk at the same time now, guys. So, but we have our coffees. Claus has a coffee and everything sounds good. So okay. Yes, we're good. Well, we're happy to have you, Claus Grønbæk, Claus. And we're discussing one of your sermons today and how it is an example of preaching the gospel of grace in the society of the good life, the welfare state. So, but Claus, why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you. Good to be here. As you said, I'm Claus. I'm a pastor in Copenhagen Central. Ended the church, Copenhagen Church, more than 20 years ago. So I've been into, all the ups and downs and struggles and blessings with church planting. Coming from a little group of people casting the vision for a church plant in Copenhagen and just wandering through all kinds of different stuff, successes and failures, but seeing people come to faith and that's been a blessing. And as I usually say, I'm ready to do it all over again. If it's tough, but it's a blessing. So we're here in Copenhagen, and I'm married to Sonia. She's a high school teacher. Been that for many years, and we have 4 kids. Kids might be an understatement because they are grown ups now and moved out of the house, and just got a little granddaughter a year ago. So we're in the next stage of life.
You've gone into Yoda mode, Claus.
Yeah.
You mean 900 years old?
Yeah. No, not that. Coaching guys like me and sharing inspirational things like you would do it all over again. I'm glad you feel that way. I never thought I would plant a church, and sometimes I wonder why I'm doing it. So that's a good to hear you say that you would do it all over again. So, well, good. We have Arni as well. Did you want to say hi too? I guess you didn't do that yet.
Oh,
No,
well, I mean,
we did that. We did the beginning, yes. But it's just
whether or not we did it, I would do it all over again. So hi, Claus, and the listeners. I'm just wondering a little bit, maybe because I don't know, but the Copenhagen Church. How long has it existed? Is it a newer church, or does it go way back?
Oh, we planted in 2001, gathering a little crowd, and we didn't know anything about church planting, but we just felt that God was calling us to plant a church and reach out for Christians, and especially for non-Christians in the city, spreading the good news and the word of God in a very post-Christian society. So we've been around for more than 20 years.
And it's part of the Lutheran sort of mission.
I found out about Copenhagen Church. Oh, sorry.
Oh, actually, we are an independent Lutheran church in Copenhagen, and we're part of Evangelical Lutheran network in Denmark, but we're not affiliated with any kind of special mission organization or something like that. So we're part of the network, and then we are part of Acts 29, which is a kind of global church planting movement. Yeah, we've been that for 10, 15 years, which has made us many good friends all over the world. So that's a blessing as well.
And then you have NMM, which is kind of Acts 29 Denmark. Would you say that's a pretty strong network identification for you too, right?
Yeah. That's right. So after 5, 7, 8 years in, we kind of felt, well, maybe we should create a network where we can inspire and help and encourage each other to actually be missional in a very post-Christian liberal context, and that has also grown. So it consists of 15, 20 churches and fellowships and church plants that wants to be gospel centered and to reach out to people.
Yeah. And we're really happy to be a part of that. Yes. Inspired by Acts 29, but not officially. I know it's kind of complicated. Everything is we have the same thing with TGC Norden. So, but yeah,
we Scandinavians, we are a little odd, so you have to bear with us.
Yeah. Well, good. We are so thankful that you sent us a message as well. And we're not I don't think you're saying it's the greatest message ever or anything, but it's an example of that Arni and I really liked as well of preaching the gospel into the good life and into a church setting. So specifically to your church. And so we'll go ahead and play a short clip from that now. Yes. So we could keep going. I wanted to keep going. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we don't, for our English listeners, we don't want maybe to confuse them too much. Claus, can you remember preaching that thought? Why don't you just continue that thought a little bit for us?
Well, I think, first of all, that sermon was a part of a little series that we did in order to explain to non-Christians, to ordinary Danes, what does it mean to be a Christian, and what is are the implications of being a Christian? And I think that one of the things that we have learned is that first of all, if you speak or talk to non-Christians, there's a possibility that the Christians will understand as well. So I think we really tried that, and we found out, especially I think with the help of Tim Keller, that we need the same gospel as a totally secular non-Christian. We are not that different. The difference is that God has intervened into our lives, but we know what it is to be a human being, and we need the gospel. It's not that we Christians, we are on a different stage, that the gospel is some kind of entrance gate or whatever, and now we need something different. No, we need the same gospel, and I think that it is a gospel that God is our Father, and the church is our family. And I know that a lot of people struggle with that. Even Christians, they struggle with that. And so I thought that just reminding that we are family. As we talked about before, faith and salvation is a great gift of God, and family is as well. Sometimes we think we have to create the family. We have it's a family when it functions, but actually, I think that it's some kind of the same that God actually gives us family. So you don't choose your family; it's not an option. It's a given when you become a child of God. So I think for us to realize that it's not only when it functions well that it's a family. It's a family, and we have a lot of encouragement to actually, let's have a good family. Let's take care of each other. Let's encourage each other. Let's help each other. But even if it's not working the way I really long for or want to, it's my family.
Do you think it's difficult, Claus? I mean, I feel like it's difficult for people in the West to sort of come on board with that message, but maybe it's even more difficult in the Nordic countries, even though we pride ourselves on social cohesion and our culture, or all those things. We are very individualistic, and we don't want to belong anywhere where we don't really consent to, and we're kind of creeped out. I mean, the three of us are used to belonging to churches and so on, but when you talk to secular people, but even Christians who might not perhaps be so active in church, they're a bit put off by the idea of belonging to a church, membership, sort of. Are you just inserting yourself into my life? This feels like a cult almost.
Yeah.
Do you run sort of into that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think maybe you from the Faroe Islands can teach us a little, because I think, especially I visited the Faroe Islands 25, 30 years ago, and that was at the time when television just has shown up on the Faroe Islands, and there were only kind of two shows, Tuesdays or Thursdays in the week.
Yes.
And at that time, I talked to people, and they say we already feel that it does something to the relationship and to the family and because now people, Tuesdays and Saturdays or whatever, they sit at home watching the television. And I mean, maybe we're a little further down the road in Denmark, but I probably has arrived.
Sweden's even further. Even further. So
yeah. So even though we would consider it unthinkable not having a screen or a television or whatever, but we don't see how much it destroys. I usually go by the high rises here in Copenhagen in the night, and you see light in every apartment, and you wonder. So now they are sitting there watching their individual screen, and they actually, how much benefit would it be if they, well, if they just sat together and watched the show, that would actually help.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something we talked about. We need to watch movies together. That's how far it's gone, man.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point that came up, guys. I wasn't expecting that, but that might be a good, just for a few minutes, I'd like to hear, Claus, or you, Arni, as well. Technology, computer games, the internet in the dark, cold north, it fills so much, especially for the young men. My son is already being tempted to become addicted to games and screens. How do we as pastors help bring a better alternative in Christ to these technologies?
Yeah, I think it's sort of a mixed bag, right? Or, it's very ambivalent, I think. Especially with Corona, I think a lot of churches sort of went far, not all in, but farther in with technology, streaming, at least here up here. And I just find it I get it. We've got some old people that can't show up, and if you're sick, you can stream the service or something like that. But community, face to face, bodies in a room is not only important, but I think that's kind of what we have to offer the world. I think there's an old Hauerwas quote where he said at some point, we're never going to win the war on television or with television, right? The internet will always be more entertaining and distracting than church. So we shouldn't even try to compete with that. But what we do have to offer is a embodied community. I mean, even like baptism and communion is such a physical thing. Jesus didn't give us ideas. He gave us, physical elements to consume with our bodies,
Yeah.
But it is a challenge. I mean, and you talk about boys and video games, but you have girls and social media, which is almost even worse. At least there's some fun and community in the video games, whereas social media seems to be all sort of comparison and anxiety and depression. I don't know. It's not good.
And here we are making a YouTube content for people to consume.
Exactly. And we're complaining on technology.
And I think it's you can't say it's good or bad, because it's all like all other gifts of God. It's a gift, and you can use it for blessing and his purpose, or the devil will immediately, because he can't create anything, he can just destroy, and so he will try to use it as a binding thing, as a substitute for God or whatever. So I think we have to just create real fellowship and relationship and family, and hopefully they will that we will all kind of taste that it's good and it's bitter. I think my observation. Sorry, Christian. My observation for Danes, even though they are super individualistic, they actually want fellowship, and loneliness is a huge problem in Denmark, but they don't know how to do it. And we are very private, so we don't open our doors, and we don't invite people or colleagues or whatever into our homes. But from my experience, because we have tried it at home, and I thought this will never work, inviting our neighbors for brunch, whatever. But they love it. But we, at least Danes, they have a very, very hard time figuring out how to do it. So I think we have to kind of encourage, work, try to make the point clear, and that's maybe also why we preach it. We preach the sermon that we just listened to. That we have to preach that I'm not the center of the world. God is, and even though sometimes I don't understand His will or what He says, He's God. He knows what is best. And at the same time, even though I don't feel like family or whatever, that's a given. That's a gift. So I have to pursue it, and I have to kind of realize or think about what does that mean for my life.
I love this conversation. And Arni, on that point that you made about relating it to Klaus's sermon and to preaching in general in the welfare society, what I loved about this sermon, among other things, I said this, is that I can sense your intimacy as well when you get in, and we didn't really get all the way into the message, so people will have to go listen to it. But where you start sharing your own experience as a church father and as this family, and how you yourself feel vulnerable and blessed and in need of this family. And it was really, really intimate and touching. Martin Lloyd-Jones, in his book on preaching, makes a distinction between lecturing and preaching. I think that is a very important point, because something happens in the room. There's a dynamic between the congregation and the pastor that is not the mere conveying of information. But I think he's a little out of date, because now we might say preaching is not the same as YouTubing a sermon. So help us, guys, help us in the Nordics, in the Good Life, understand as pastors, how is preaching a unique act of building this sense of intimacy and family we're talking about? How does it different from just YouTubing or even just consuming information in a different way?
Well, I think for me, it goes the other way around. I think I feel the envy to actually. So give me instructions. Give me the 10 ways to have an effective sermon or whatever. We as pastors and planters, we all kind of we want to be like Tim Keller or have, but I think and one of my mentors, Jeff Vanderstill, he made a video about the whole kind of Soma thing, being family together on mission, and I remember at the end of that video, which was very kind of encouraging and challenging and all that, and he said, if you don't have the love in your heart for people, forget about everything else. You have to love people, and I think that you can't learn to make a heart-to-heart sermon. Of course, you can improve your different kind of techniques or how to build up. But for me, I think it's very important to love the people, and I think it's not something that you. It is when you are together with people, when you talk to people, when you help people, when you ask for help, when you are among people, the love grows. So I think that hopefully pastors are not obsessed with being popular or being the next Tim Keller, but they are busy loving their flock, no matter if they are few or many. I think I hope and I think that the congregation will feel if you are making the next YouTube sermon, or if you are trying to preach to them or love them and help them well. So I think, for me at least, spending time with people, God kind of puts them on my heart, and I'm no different. Even though I'm the pastor, I can't live without relationship, fellowship, encouragement, challenge. So I have to be among people. And I know that's difficult for pastors and planters because we kind of think that we are on a equal level or whatever with people, but they kind of always consider you as the pastor. But I think just being there with people, I often think when I'm among people in church or also in different kind of things that we do in prison, in feeding the poor or whatever, I always get much more than I give. Even though I give a sermon or something, I feel kind of they teach me something about God, about how much we need the gospel, or what is love, or something like that. So God always surprises me, because I think now I'm gonna give them something, but immediately I'm given so much. So I think being among people and loving people is a way to kind of stir up your emotions and make your heart greater.
Wonderful.
And
You're such a good example of all the things you're saying, Claus. So I just want to say that and honor you. And I want to ask you about the outreach side of things. And Arni and I talked a little bit about this too. You have the prison outreach, but you also, in the sermon itself, you're talking to unbelievers and you're inviting feedback. This is something you've done for a long time. How has your experience been? I know you're inspired by Tim Keller, and you want to keep beating that drum. I haven't been to Copenhagen in a while. So are there a lot of unbelievers coming?
Yeah, fortunately, we see non-believers every Sunday. I mean, that's even, I love the church, but I love the lost sheep. So I'm so happy to actually say that we see almost every service, I think, people inviting their friends, their colleagues, their family. And we also see people come to faith, which is not that common. We don't see kind of flocks of or awakenings in the city center, but now then we see a person coming to Christ, which is one of the most kind of extraordinary gifts that we get, which is not only a gift for that person, but also encourage my faith and my love for God. So, but I think, and that's maybe something that we have tried to do from the beginning, that we try to have a service and to talk and preach and lead the service in a way that non-Christians feel somehow at home, which means that, and you can do that by very, very few things. For example, when I'm introduced, if I preach that particular Sunday, they say, well, Claus is one of the pastors in this church. And I mean, 95% of the people there, of course, they know it. But it's a little sign of saying, well, we don't assume that everybody know who Claus is. So we introduce him. We say, just saying welcome to the people that are there. And then we also try in our sermons to actually address. So this is for example, that sermon, that particular sermon that I sent to you guys, which is, you could say it's a sermon that teaches about how do we live as Christians. And some would say, why do you preach that on Sunday if non-Christians are present? But we will, for example, say, well, today you as non-Christians that are here, you're so welcome. Today it's a little more about, what is life inside the church. So you get the even though that you might not understand everything, you get an opportunity to look in the windows and see how does this work in an everyday life. So I think that is important, both for the non-Christians, but maybe mainly for the Christians. If you want them to invite their friends, they they feel kind of unsure or insecure. How will my non-Christian friend be welcomed, or will he kind of think that this is totally different, or I don't understand everything? So when you preach and when it shines through your sermon or your service that we think of the non-Christians as well, they get the courage to actually invite my friend. I can invite him or her because I know it will not be for the choir only.
I love this.
So
I love this.
It's and then we have tried to, because a lot of non-Christians, they think church is nothing. You don't participate. You're not part of a fellowship. You come into the church, you sit, you go out again. Nobody has ever nobody will kind of notice if you're there or not. So we try to actually, how can we create some kind of interaction or feeling of being part of a fellowship. So, for example, we encourage every service, after the service, we encourage people to actually, before you rush out of the church, say hello to someone you haven't met before, just to make sure that everybody gets a hello or a hi. After the sermon or during the sermon, on our slides, we have our phone number. So we always, after people can actually text a question or a comment or whatever during the sermon.
Or rebuke, maybe.
Yeah, or rebuke, or protest. And after the sermon, we will take a couple of these questions that we get on our phone, and answer them. And if there are more, we will answer them directly on the text. But this kind of creates an environment where people kind of feel, okay, I can be here and I can actually ask a question or protest or whatever, which is kind of people like to say, well, it's about me and I'm welcome and I can be here even though I don't believe or agree. So I think for us to actually think through, how would it be if I had a friend, and then final thing maybe would be, let's be bold. People don't want the commercial thing. They want the real deal. So as we would want, I mean, if a Buddhist friend told me, why don't you come and meet, my fellowship or my master or whatever, I will, I don't want, the kind of slick, nice and happy. I want the real deal. So challenge me. So tell me what you're doing. And I think from my experience, people, they want the real deal. Right. So you can preach about hell. You can preach about, in this sermon, I kind of preach, I say something about alcohol and sex, which was what they,
I was going to mention that.
Expect, and challenge the whole reaction about that. So let's just preach the word, and people will listen or will be challenged, but yeah.
I mean, if they reject it, at least they're rejecting the real thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I thought it was a very good example of how to engage culturally when you did talk about sex and alcohol. You said something like, a lot of people think being a Christian is having a weird sort of attitude about sex and alcohol. But you said, well, I mean, both sex and alcohol are good things, in their proper place. And then you brought that you took that example and said, but being a Christian isn't really about a lifestyle or the question of morality or something, even though it does have something to do with that. But actually, it's about an inner transformation that God does out of His grace. It's not a presentation. It's not we live up to. It's something. Yeah.
I also want to challenge, and I challenge the initial reaction to non-Christians that these Christians, they have a weird side of sex and alcohol. But I challenge them in the sermon and say, so you think it's so why shouldn't you get drunk, or why shouldn't you sleep with everybody?
Yes, yeah.
And I said, so why is that so difficult? Because a lot of problems in our society derives directly because people are not following God's design. So they create a lot of, at least in Denmark, we have the world's highest kind of alcohol abuse among young people, and out of the government or whatever. So how can we reduce that? How can we? So I try to challenge the kind of normal reaction. Well, that's weird, and I think that Christians as well, they kind of get defensive because they think, well, maybe we have a very weird view on sex and alcohol and everything else. So in order to actually oppose that and challenge that, you also teach the Christians, well, maybe it's not that weird. Maybe it's actually good.
Yeah, that was a great point that you raised.
Yeah.
It's both sort of going on, not on the defensive. You take the sort of the prejudice of Christians are weird about sex and alcohol and say, well, I mean, we're not that weird, but also maybe you have the problem. Sort
You're
of,
the weirdo.
if we just followed the will of God in Danish society, we'd have all, we'd have all sorts of good benefits from that. I think that's a very good way of sort of taking up something, like a prejudice or an idea that a secular person might come into church with, and you do it in a really sort of relaxed, sort of humorous way. You're not afraid to go there, and you come across as likable. I think,
the dynamic in the room was very, very good. So, Claus, thank you. If you're right, there's not revival happening in the city center, but what if dozens of churches around the Nordics preach the word like you've exemplified, with a love for the people, with an engagement with the culture, but a boldness? What if dozens of churches around the North began to see this not as a task or a lecture or a YouTube opportunity, but a breaking of our hearts to see people repent and believe and know the great hope? And God has not finished with the Nordics. Feels that way sometimes, doesn't it? Hundreds of years, it feels like it's just been this small growth or no growth or slow growth. But what if the Lord tarries? It'd be guys like you, Claus, more of your tribe, please. So we usually wrap up the podcast with asking what we're reading. We don't have a lot of time left, but let's quickly mention one book we're reading.
Yeah. Well, actually, I had two books, but I actually have it here. It's an old classic. Well, I know it's Ole Hallesby, and a very old classic about prayer. A very wise pastor, a friend of me. He said he read Tim Keller's book on prayer. He says that's really good, but this is even better. So it creates that prayer again. It's good news. It's not a burden. It's just like breathing in and out. So I think that's a very good. I'm rereading it now, and it's very encouraging and challenging. So that I think that's the book that I read right now. And of course, also not of course maybe, but the whole kind of Israel situation. I'm reading a book about that, the kind of historical. So that's what on my kind of desk.
What about you, Christian?
I had a couple too, but since Claus mentioned that with Israel, I'm also taking an Old Testament class, and we have two books about holy war in the Old Testament and how we deal with it ethically and apologetically. Nice. And one of them is called The Immoral Bible. I forget who the author is. I have it downstairs in my library, but yeah, very interesting. Obviously, timing wise, because there is questions about these things that secular people are raising, Christians are raising, and the book itself is a little more critical than I think. It's a little bit more of the scholarly, maybe even kind of secular approach to answering these questions. A little, skeptical of the scriptures, doesn't maybe presuppose as much authority and sufficiency to the scriptures as I would like, but it's an interesting read. So.
I'm reading a really interesting one called The Return of the Dragon. It's not the old Bruce Lee film. It's by a guy called Louis Ungett. He looks at hallucinogenic psychedelic drugs and their connection to demons, which I found it's very strange. Even secular people who go on, DMT, LSD, psilocybin, all those drugs, ayahuasca, magic mushrooms, a lot of them report meeting like they meet beings, entities of some sort, but a lot of them report meeting like serpent entities. And his argument is that we're talking about demons, and he traces it back to the Old Testament, traces it to all sorts of the Vikings, the Maya, the Aztecs, the Philistines, all over the world, people have been tripping on drugs throughout history and communing with demons. Really, that's what he's saying. And with Christianity going out of, with secularization, people are opening those doors again, and it's not a good thing. So that's a interesting book.
I've known a small number of Danes that have come to Christ while tripping, and they meet a demon, and it freaks them out and says the spiritual world exists.
Yeah, he mentions one piece of research that said that the cohort, the people that participating in the research, 30% of them were atheists, but only 8% were atheists after tripping, which is good. But I mean, if you're deceived by those sorts of entities, which most people are, I think some people are freaked out, as you say. But actually, I talked to one guy who said, "Of course, I believe in God. I've done so many mushrooms over the years. I met Jesus several times," he said. So maybe it's not all bad, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. Took some directions I didn't expect, and lots of really meaty things, Claus, from you from the top of the dome, and very encouraging to be together with you guys digitally like this. And we'll see you again soon in the office, Claus.
Yeah.
Good meeting you, Claus.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
All right, Christian, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too.
What a good guy. I felt a little bit left out in the beginning because you know Claus so well. I mean, you share an office more or less and hang out on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've seen him before, maybe at the first TGC conference or Norden conference.
Yeah, he was kind of the church host.
Yeah.
Remember? And he asked the questions to the Nordic panel.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what a nice guy. I was happy you brought this up. What the pastor's heart,
Yeah, he's really, I think he shows so much patience with people, and that's not my greatest gift in ministry. So I've really been humbled by being around him. And like he said, just his perspective, he would do it all over again in terms of this long, slow work of planting a church. I mean, and his church is now quite big. It's kind of a mega church by Nordic standards, but it's been a long, slow, and it's been very difficult. And he deals with a lot of the same challenges. So that's just really inspiring to church planters out there too.
Yeah, exactly. He's maybe a bit farther ahead, if that's the right way of putting it. One thing that I was a bit surprised by, I didn't tell him this, but I was expecting a younger guy from just hearing his voice.
Huh? Yeah,
not saying that he's old, but he has a very sort of depends on how you sort of twist that one. But but he sounds like a guy maybe in his early 30s or something. Just listening to his voice, how he delivers it, the sermon, and sort of the examples that he uses.
He keeps current, which is good. I was hoping we would get a little bit more into the technical of expository preaching versus because I feel like he was walking through the text, but he kind of had more of that revivalist tone of like calling, addressing the people, and I think that's a strength of the message. But it's always interesting to hear people's thoughts on kind of expository preaching, but that's okay.
Yeah, but I think one of the overall points of his sermon, and I raised this a little bit, is that the Christian life isn't a technique. It's not an ethical system, a change of, it starts with a change of heart that God does. And maybe there was a little bit of a parallel. We didn't really get into all the technicalities of this and that, but he really shared his heart. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I saw a connection between those two. But Christian, I mean, if people want to know more about TGC Norden, they can go to the website, right? Is it norden.thegospelcoalition.org?
That's right. Please go there. Yes. And
you can read some articles and things like that. Keep up with what we're doing. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, right? So I don't know if we have like an address or something, but if you just search for TGC Norden, you'll find us there. I mean, that's also a way of contacting us, right? If people want to talk to either both of us or either one.
Yeah.
That'd be cool to get some feedback. And
especially on this podcast, we haven't decided, are we going to do a Grace in the Good Life Facebook account or something? We don't know.
Yeah,
we'll figure it out as we go. We're building the plane.
We should have figured that out before we brought it up on the podcast.
Yes, exactly. But hey, grace.
We all need some grace in whatever life we live.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking time to listen. We really appreciate it. And thankful for TGC helping us with this podcast. And yes, may you go with grace in the good life.
Yeah. Perfect.